Hi, my name is Carol Harmer. I think most of my followers on here, well, hopefully most, would know me from Charmer Trading. I've been in international finance for 40 years, at quite high level. I've worked for 3 major banks. I've run my own hedge fund. I've run other people's hedge funds. So there's not a lot, really, that I don't know about finance. That's the first thing I want to get out of the way, that I'm not some Fruit Loop who just magically got into any conspiracy theory, which I didn't. I'm not into conspiracy theory. I did it in facts, and facts only. But I research a lot, and I know a lot of people in various different jobs across the globe. I happen to know 2 people from the who don't work there anymore, but I've known them for 30 years. And I got a call from them, both of them, in January 2020, saying that China had let a bug out, some form of bug virus that attacked people's lungs, and because I have emphysema, they wanted me to be aware of the fact that it probably wouldn't reach Europe, but that it might, and for me to take care. So they sent me this box of stuff, which included ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, steroids, antibiotics, and 30,000 UI vitamin D. Now, I already take vitamin D, 5,000 per day. I take zinc, magnesium, K2. So I already boost my own immune system, because I know what can go wrong with it. If I get another lung disease, it will hurt me. Anyway, they rang me again and said that it had been downgraded, and not to worry, it was never going to reach us, and if it did, it was only going to be like a normal seasonal bad flu. Now, after spending 7 weeks in a lung unit, obviously I saw a lot in 2017 when I had double pneumonia, and I saw a lot that went on with the elderly and the way that they succumbed, sadly, to anything ranging from bronchitis to flu to pneumonia, whatever, which made me even more determined that at my age I wasn't going to lay down and take it. I was going to get up and get better, which I did. So anyway, back to the story. In my world in 2020, the markets were going crazy, absolutely crazy. I was working God knows how many hours a day. And then when my friend said that it had been downgraded, the world went into lockdown, and I couldn't understand it. So I started researching, which was quite stupid of me really, but I started researching into the NHS, because it's public, you can have a look, and I just happened to come across this guy called Andy, and he said any questions, email him at this address, which I did. Now, Andy was a disgruntled NHS worker by this time, and so he gave me a lot of links which were absolutely mind-blowing. It showed that actually no one was dying in hospital. They wasn't. The figures were nothing like it. So what you were hearing drummed into you daily by Hancock, Boris, and the rest of the misfits, it just wasn't true. It just wasn't true. The data from NHS England didn't back it up. But what I did notice is that people were dying in care homes. Now, my mum's 84, was 84. Unbeknownst to me, my little sister and her had had a conversation, funnily enough, the night before she took ill. And my little sister was well clued up and said, "You're never going to care home, Mum, don't worry." Anyway, the next day my mum had a dizzy turn, and my other sister called an ambulance, and although my mum recovered, it was deemed that it was probably best that she went in for a checkup, which she did. And she was walking, she was talking, and she was alert. Off she went into hospital, and then my sister was told that she had a small tear in her heart and that she would require surgery. But they couldn't do it at the Conquest Hospital, Hastings. They had to do it at another hospital, which they did, or which they said they were going to do. 4 hours later, they came back and said, we're not doing it. She's too ill to move, which was like, I don't understand. She's walking, talking and doing whatever. How is she ever too ill to move? But that's what they said. 4 hours later, my mother was in a coma. 24 hours later, my mother was dead. And I couldn't get my head around it. I just couldn't. I was in lockdown in Spain. I didn't understand what had gone on. Now, being of a critical thinker's mind, which I think you have to be when you work 40 years in finance, I don't think I come out of the womb asking why. I'm just one of those people. But what part of my job was to research. So if you're trading the euro, you're researching what's going on in Europe. If you're trading the dollar, you get to know what's going on in America. It's just the way that we work. You research. So I started researching this midazolam and morphine. It just kept appearing on Telegram. It was like weird. And I thought, surely they're not doing this to the elderly, not the elderly. You know, as I said, my mum was 84. She'd gone through the Second World War. She was frail. She wasn't frail, my mum. The day before, she was teaching people in Waitrose how to line dance. So she wasn't frail. In fact, she probably was 84 going on 64. She could do much more than I could. Anyway, this midazolam and morphine bugged me. Really, really bugged me. So I applied for her medical records and I emailed the Conquest Hospital. And I got put in touch with pals and I emailed them because I knew, deep down in my gut, I knew something had gone horribly wrong with my mum. And my sisters were in no position to fight, nor was my brother. I've always been the gobby one of the family. I had no issue with calling them everything under the sun. And I did. But you know what? I got the information. Finally, I got the information. I got a letter back from Joe Chadwick Bell, who is East Sussex's CEO. My mother was given huge doses of midazolam and morphine that killed her. End of story. She was put on end of life 4 hours after being admitted to the Conquest. My sister never got to say goodbye. My brother never got to say goodbye. I never got to say goodbye. My mum was in no fit state for anybody to say goodbye to. Which started me thinking, wrong thing for me to think, because my brain just goes at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And it was, well, they couldn't have just done this to my mum. So I started a group on Telegram about midazolam and morphine. I was inundated, literally inundated. And there was one guy in particular who picked me up and put me on a group where there was lawyers that were willing to fight. Anyway, that all went horribly wrong. Now, my point is this, and I take no pleasure at all in saying this. In fact, it couldn't be further from the truth that I take zero pleasure in any of this. But what it turns out is that the majority of those that died in COVID didn't die of COVID. They were murdered by midazolam and morphine. Hancock procured 2 years of midazolam from France. He went back at the end of June for more. Let that sink in for a minute. More midazolam, and was refused. How could they use 3 years worth of midazolam in that short space of time? And that's what sent me on my quest of what the hell went on? What the hell did they do? So I want you to take a real look at this, because, you know, I have no reason to lie to you at all. None. But anybody who lost a loved one in a care home or in the NHS hospital between March and the end of June, please try and get their medical records, because you will find that they died of midazolam and morphine, not COVID. Now, people who are elderly and have underlying health conditions are always going to be prone to dying in the winter. I saw it firsthand in 2017. What I want now is for the truth to come out, because you see, without the killing, the democide of the elderly in that period of time in 2020, they couldn't have locked you down. They couldn't have forced you to lose your business, your home, your income, 2 years of your life. But more importantly, they couldn't have forced you to have an experimental jab that they knew was dangerous. As an international financial trader, part of my research is with Big Pharma, because they make up a huge majority of the S&P 500. So I know how rotten they are, and I know all their dirty secrets. It's out there for public domain. Look it up. So when this COVID inquiry has come along, that has not asked any questions about midazolam and morphine, about the fact that Boris and co were pissing it up the wall while we were all locked down, and they were having sex, and they were drunk every Friday and thought it was funny. Tell me how. How did that even possibly happen? How could it possibly happen when they knew, or they thought they knew, every single detail of what COVID-19 was about? Well, let me explain. They did know. The reason for COVID coming along so conveniently was the fact that since 2001, the banks have been in trouble. They were in trouble again in 2008, 2009, and they got bailed out by the central banks. Central banks lost billions. They're broke. Now, we knew that the bond auctions had gone along, and by 2019 something would have to be done, you know, because you can't just have bond auctions disappearing like that. It doesn't work like that. Finance doesn't work like that. So we knew that there was going to be something big that happened in 2019. As it happened in 2020, where I saw firsthand all Western governments crash their economy on purpose, because there was no other reason. This is my job. This has been my life for 40 years. There is no other reason. They purposely crashed the economy. And they crashed the economy because they were broke. They were broke from bailing out the banks 10 years previously. So they had no option. And by being broke, they could bring in the central bank digital currency and say, look how we looked after you in COVID. Well, this is the price. You now don't get the pension funds are broke. They're all broke. Now what do we do now? We've got a COVID inquiry that hasn't asked one question about any of this. Not the parties, not the Dominic Cummings little jaunt to whatever class we went to. None of it. No questions of any substance has been asked. I've watched this farce go on for 2 weeks. And they're lying to you. And they will continue to lie to you. But remember this. Without the democide of the elderly, they couldn't have made you take the experimental jab. And that was the reason why. Doctors knew about ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, vitamin D. They knew. They chose not to tell us. They chose to withdraw it. They coerced and bullied and forced people into having these experimental jabs. And now we're seeing the repercussions of these experimental jabs. We are seeing people who are dead. We are seeing people who have had limbs amputated. We're seeing people who've got clots, strokes, heart attacks that will never work again. Never. And when Sunak was asked yesterday, when he was asked why, he was asked about long COVID. Really? Are you kidding me? Long COVID? There's no such thing. The reason people are claiming the dole now is because they've been harmed by them. Don't forget that. Everybody got paid off. Everybody. The media, they've been bought off. If you only knew the scope of this complete farce that's been the last 4 years of our life, you would go insane. You'd be like me. I'd sit there, I'd go, oh my God, this can't possibly be happening. And it is. And it's still happening. As luck would have it now, we now have midazolam and morphine banned from end-of-life drugs in 2023. End of 2023. This is my promise. I will not give up. I will be coming for you. Take that as gospel. I will fight you every step of the way. Because what I hate is the fact that you murdered my mother. You murdered tens, hundreds of thousands of people's loved ones, mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, grandparents. And you think you're going to get away with it? Really? Well, let me tell you, you're not. If it takes me to the end of my days, I will make sure you don't get away with it. I will scream this from the highest mountain outwards. And I want everybody, please, who lost a parent in this time or at any time during these lockdowns, to please get their medical records. Ask for the MAR. It's really, really important. It's the medical assessment record. It is what they do when the patient first goes into hospital or a care home. They assess them. Please look for the drug. Look for midazolam and morphine. Let's bring these people down because they need it. Okay? If anybody has any questions at all to ask me about finance and what I know, what I don't know, feel free to message me. I don't care. My 2 friends from the WHO left in April 2020. I've asked them to go public. They won't, as they fear for their children's safety and their safety. I don't give a shit about my safety. You can't hurt me anymore. You've jabbed my family. You've murdered my mother. You jabbed my stepmother where she died 6 weeks later. Don't talk to me about hurt and pain. You couldn't get to me anymore. So as I say, a storm is coming. We are that storm. And you best believe it. We are definitely coming for you.